What is going on, my St. Louis City fam? I'm your girl Kelly, here to give you the rundown on what happened in St. Louis City government this week, and I'm gonna get right into it with some of these highlights. First and foremost, there were bills passed out of the Streets and HUDs committees, 3 bills to be exact, that would move along some major development projects in the city of St. Louis. So, what are these projects? I'm gonna get into it, y'all. The first project is it's related to the Veterans Community Project, also known as AKA the Tiny Homes Project. And, they also provide wraparound services to support unhoused veterans here in the city of St. Louis. So basically, the bill will do away with an alley bounded by Aldine, Grand Cass, and Spring to consolidate property for residential development needed to execute this Veterans Community Project. So the second project is related to the Cortex, and the bill it put a request in to change the zoning from industrial to commercial usage at Sarah and Clayton. And this change needed to be done so they could build, to allow the building of 3 structures there. So the first, a residential structure with 161 units. And of those units, 30 would be workforce housing. And workforce housing in this instance, we're looking at income restricted housing. So this is for those earning between $60,000 and $80,000 for in a household of 3. That's what we were told during the committee meeting. The second structure is an office structure, so we're talking about office space. That's 120,000 square feet. And also the last structure, of course, people got to park. So a parking garage for with 525 to 625 spaces. And then the third project discussed this week, 13.9 outdoor recreational facility. But y'all, forget all that fancy jargon. We talking about, yes, the Top Golf project. Yes, right around the corner from SLU. So there was a request to change the zoning to make, I think there are 12 different parcels, and they kind of had different zoning classifications. So the request was made to make all of the zoning with all of those parcels the same to allow for this development. So like I mentioned, there were 3 bills. They passed out of the Streets and HUDs committees with due pass recommendation for the full Board of Aldermen. And then the next highlight I wanted to mention, because I learned a lot during the Public Safety Committee meeting this week. Did y'all know that there is an environmental investigations unit in the police department? Maybe y'all did, but I ain't know. So like I said, I learned this week. And so their unit, they presented, like I said, during the Public Safety Committee meeting. The unit, it was created in 2010 to address the growing concerns about illegal dumping. So they provided a sort of kind of like a year in review during the Public Safety Committee meeting. So what did they do in 2021? So here's a little bit of info. So they increased their staffing to 16 detectives and officers regularly working overtime. I will repeat that. They increased their staffing to 16 detectives and officers regularly working overtime. 16, yes, for the entire city of St. Louis. Yeah, okay. They increased their cameras from 204 to 225, and they expect another 50 cameras by early summer. They also handled 1,795 complaints from the Citizen Service Bureau. 83% of those were handled within 10 days. They issued 571 summonses with a total of 650 charges. This was an increase from the past 2 years. And this resulted in over 4,000 hours of community service, $145,260 assessed in fines, and this was a 137% increase from 2020, and $6,800 awarded to witnesses. And apparently, every witness that helps with one of these cases, when it comes to, being an eyewitness to illegal dumping, they get $100 when they help out with a case. 500. So there were 573 offenders when we're talking about, that were given these summonses. 54% of them live in the city of St. Louis, and 46% of them live outside the city. Important to note that those 573, they include repeat offenders. Of those 571 summonses issued by the Environmental Investigations Unit, 70% came from what was captured by, yep, you guessed it, alley cameras. 16% came from eyewitnesses, and 14% came from observations from those police officers and detectives, because apparently, when they're doing their thing, they're in unmarked cars. So, yeah. So the immediate next steps, the Environmental Investigations Unit will provide each alderperson with a 2021 report that includes, all these stats by each ward, as well as information on how to contact them so they can attend neighborhood meetings and inform us, the community, about what's going on with this matter. So there were some issues and questions raised. So one, I think it might have been Alderwoman Davis. She mentioned, increasing the awareness among St. Louis City residents that, as a city resident, you can go to the city dump and dump for free once a month. So that's one thing. The second thing that was mentioned, the footage from these Environmental Investigations Unit cameras in alleys, they're not connected to any other surveillance efforts in the city, like the real-time crime center. So footage has to be physically downloaded by the staff, which takes some time, right, and effort when they're already understaffed. Alderman Oldenburg, he mentioned that the Capital Committee, they could consider using capital funds to support the equipment upgrades needed to make sure that these surveillance efforts, they're connected. It makes it more effective and efficient. And then also, Alderwoman Navarro, she really brought up a good point and a question, expressing her opinion about some of this illegal dumping coming from employees dumping on behalf of their construction-related employer. So, when they get caught, she asks, what happens to them? So apparently the employee, they get fined $500. The employer gets fined $500 for not having a commercial dumping license. Yeah, and that's it, y'all. But the Environmental Investigations Unit, they urge the Board of Aldermen to consider enacting legislation to curb this and really hold these employers accountable by maybe, blocking their permits or licenses or whatever it is they need to operate within the city of St. Louis if they get caught illegal dumping. So I'm sure there's more to come on that, but if you have specific questions about your ward, yes, contact your alderperson. And then I'm rounding out with the legislative corner, y'all. So there were a couple of bills passed or pieces of legislation passed that I wanted to mention. First, there's legislation passed allowing the voters to decide on April 5th of this year, y'all, yes, a proposal that would issue general obligation bonds not to exceed $50 million. And I talked about this before, that those bonds will be used to make some much needed capital improvements throughout the city of St. Louis. And then also the mask mandate was extended by the Board of Aldermen unanimously for another month. That's all I have for y'all this week. Please stay safe out there, and you will see me soon. Peace.